We were talking about off the air about concept cars and hoping to see General Motors bring more of them out into the market and let people see those, because I can tell you that in Chattanooga I was doing an event not too long ago, and they had brought some of those concept cars from the Heritage Center at General Motors in Detroit, and they were the most futuristic, cool looking cars, and the kids were flocking to them, and that's important. We've got to maintain that.
Yeah, I wish they did more. Even, I've been doing the show 27 years, and I remember when it was much more common. We do have a great concept car coming, the Buick Wildcat.
Nice.
If you've seen that debuted in Detroit a little bit ago. So we get them once in a while, but we used to have 6, 7, 8, and not just Philly. I mean, they just don't do them.
They just don't do them.
They're investing in.
They're not pointing you guys out and saying we're not doing it for them.
No, I think what they used to do is they would send these vehicles out and get the styling cues of what the public like, and kind of get that done. Now I think they do it with computers and focus groups.
Well, listen,
and they don't use the same process.
Every designer and every engineer went to the same school, and he's after the same thing, to get the most amount of fuel mileage out of the car and to get the most aerodynamic out of the car. And that's why people say, oh, a lot of cars look the same. Well, it's because they went to the same class.
Same process.
Yeah. So.
Before we get into EVs, I was going to say, I remember, we were talking about memories. I remember my grandfather's garage, and my father-in-law had owned a dealership in Wyoming, and I remember going into his garage and that smell. And I walked into the store. What was the first thing I said? I said, "Oh, I love that smell." It is classic.
Yeah.
And it's,
I don't know if you'll have those with, this is a nice segue, with electric cars.
No.
What do batteries smell like?
You.
Well,
I could
not my first show.
I could say I led you there, but I didn't do anything. You just took it.
What's your take on electric cars personally? What do you think about electric cars?
No, I got it.
I know.
We're going to electrification. All right, I'm going to be more. I'm deciding how blunt I should be.
Right.
The fleet of vehicles in this country is going to change.
Absolutely.
Is changing before our eyes. The problem is it's difficult for a government and or the manufacturer to make a market if the consumer isn't ready yet. And some are. And right now, electric vehicles make up pure electric. There's so many acronyms and names people get. It's like buying mattresses. Right. They're all the same. They got different names and they price them different.
Tires are the same.
Yeah, all right. So you have a scenario of the consumer, though. It's about 8% of the market, but some of the goals or through the EPA, and by the way, we have 3 different entities controlling emissions and what's going on with these cars. You got the federal government, you got the government of California, and 17 states abide by that, and then you have the EPA coming in and having their own say. But with all of that, they're looking at 40% maybe by 2027, and you've heard the comments from other GM and others that they're going to be free of all of that. So I don't know how we get there, because the early adopters take that 8%.
Absolutely.
And getting there between 8 and 40 is very difficult. With that said, we're moving. The product's coming.
Sure.
The billions of dollars have been invested. And technology can change. So my caveat in what I'm saying today could be completely wrong if they go to solid-state batteries or do things like that. But it's very difficult with the infrastructure to get that widespread. So I don't know if the cart got before the horse, the product before the infrastructure, but it's certainly a concern in regards to living, because it's a different DNA. You mentioned it wouldn't smell like this. No, it wouldn't. And living with one, which I have a hybrid plug-in. It gets about 25 miles. It's wonderful because I can go to work and back and not burn any gasoline. If I have to go places, but I don't have to worry and have the apprehension. With that said, the E-Track, though, as that market goes there, is very important. The show has always been a bastion of education of the consumer, whether it was 1902 that you had mentioned or today. And as that portfolio transitions to electrification, the consumer has apprehension. People do not dispose of their money when they're apprehensive. And so the E-Track with the manufacturers that are on there, there'll be 5 or 6 manufacturers. By the way, go to phillyautoshow.com. You'll get anything. They're working on that feverishly, and updated every day. But it gets them in these vehicles. And there's also discussions about charging and what to do in your home, because the infrastructure at home, that's why it's difficult in Philadelphia. How are you going to charge a vehicle? The whole
on the street.
The whole, and you know what happens. So it's a way to get people, some of these people, there'll be 40 or 50,000 people who get into an electric vehicle that haven't really been in an electric vehicle. So they feel the torque, and there are some advantages through that.
Sure.
So it's coming, and we're trying to educate them on the product that's going to be on the dealer's lots 2, 3, 4 years as far as propulsion is concerned.
Well, I can tell you, too, that education on a one-on-one basis is much better than just somebody reading it on the internet.
Yes.
Because, A, you don't really know for sure what's true and what's not true when you're reading something on the internet. And B, when you have that one-on-one, it's just like with us when we go out and do shows at the Philly Auto Show or other shows that we do. Our best marketing is one-on-one with the consumer.
Correct.
And we talk about things. And listen, I think that there's a place for electric vehicles. Don't get me wrong. I'm not this purist who's got gasoline in his veins and says, come hell or high water, I'm never going to. I get an electric car. Listen, they had electric cars in the early 1900s. Probably in 1902 at the Philly Auto Show, there were electric cars.
I found an ad. And they were fighting. They were fighting between combustible engines and electrification. Obviously, combustible engines won.
And there are so many things that an electric vehicle makes sense for. A lady who lives, a widow by herself who lives 5 miles from everywhere she goes. A retired guy who just goes to the golf course and the country club and to the grocery store and all that downtown areas that people are not driving long distances. Where I think the stumbling block is going to be is for people long distance wanting to drive to Florida, wanting to drive to California. Now, can they make a car that can recharge off the energy off a tire rolling down the highway? Probably. Maybe that's the way that they be. If it becomes, or solar or something, who knows what. I mean, there's all different ways.
I'm for EVs. I agree with you. I'm just concerned about the process to get there, and how bloody does it have to be in a sense of what's being made, the consumer taste, the affordability of cars is an issue. Right?
It's an issue, whether it's EV or
any
combustion engine.
Absolutely, EVs are a little more expensive, but their price is coming down. But all over the whole industry, and then you have rising interest rates, and people buy cars by monthly payments.
That's the number one question they ask. What's my payment going to be?
Per month. I mean, it's been that way since Methuselah was here. And so when you get higher price, the average vehicle now is in the low 40s.
It's crazy.
The average price of a new vehicle. So when you put that on top of higher interest rates, those monthly payments are going up. So it's a big deal, and affordability is a big deal. And on the EV side, that's where the real headway will be made, is if they can get a vehicle that is lower price, that has that technology and some range, so that the more broad demographic can purchase that or consider that.
Sure.
They're not going to consider broadly a $70,000 or $80,000 EV.
No, and not when also they may or may not, falsely or true or not true, if they think that the batteries are going to go bad in 5 years and you're going to have to get a $27,000 bill for replacing batteries. Yeah. And of course that may be an old wives' tale already, but who knows?
I know it's true in a certain narrow sense. I mean, you could take a look at replacing a Hummer
or a Tesla,
or something like that. Yeah. So, but Tesla,
not the Prius.
No. So it is the most. Everybody says this because it's always changing. That's what's great about our industry. But I'll say it anyway. This is the most transitory state of the auto industry. Probably since the assembly line with Ford and Mr. Ford. And why I say that is you have the pandemic and you have what went on with that. And then you have what's going on with interest rates going up. We've seen that before, but all the turmoil that we have seen and the change, you have to overlay the fact that the soul of the automobile is changing.
Right.
And your relationship with that automobile, whether you like it or not, at some point is going to change because of the DNA and the electrification. And that is going to happen. And so it has this robust change this industries always have, but you overlay the change of the soul of the vehicle. And it is interesting times for sure for everybody, the manufacturers, the consumers, the regulatory people, the dealers themselves. It's going to be crazy.
Well, when you get some of the millennials now, and I say millennials, that's probably in the wrong term, but kids today who are buying cars who don't care, it's an appliance to them. Some of them are just not car people. They just need something to get point A to point B.
And that's okay.
Absolutely.
And I'm not going to name manufacturers that make those washing machines, but they're there.
Absolutely.
And, you know, everybody needs a really good Maytag.
Absolutely.
You know, or a Kenmore. And that's fine for them. Not me, but it's fine for them.
I want something that I enjoy to drive. And if you don't stop and turn back and look at your car after you park it, then you're in the wrong car. Or you're not a car person.
I just got a new car. I'm not going to tell you what it is. It's really
I saw it
nice.
when you pulled in. I like it.
And it's nice. It's nice. And my wife was with me. She wasn't with me when I got it. Right. And I go, yep, I know I bought the right one. You just look twice when we're going into the grocery store.
That is so indicative of what, you know, our generation did and learned about. And you know, just cars were so important. I can remember as a kid making lists of the cars that I wanted to own and what I would do to one if I had it and all these things. And it was all cars. Yeah. I mean, my whole life, everything that you ever did, if you think about it, usually revolved around a car. 99% of your life, going to have your first child, going to the hospital, accidents, going to school, accidents that are accidents in the back seat and accidents on the highway too. But I mean, so many things that we did evolved around the automobile, and it's hard not for that to be just ingrained in us.
So let me tell you a little bit about your space with the AACA. That room at the convention center, which is the old train shed, which is marble and beautiful, very classy. It's the classiest space in the country. I go to a lot of shows. Absolutely. Have you gone overseas? And then putting the kind of product that you have and our friends from AACA and our good buddy, Mr. Jones.
Yes,
we could do a whole podcast about him. Good.
We absolutely could.
He's and he looks like Santa, which is really cool. I wish maybe even you probably put a picture up of him. But
we've had him on the show actually. He was great. He's just fantastic.
Saint Nick. Anyway, those vehicles in that area, especially during the day when that light's coming in, that natural, it is a museum.
Yeah, it really is.
It is. And those people come up from SEPTA because that's from the suburbs. That's where we come upstairs. You don't have to go outside. And the first thing they do, well, they buy a ticket, obviously. And then they come in and they are in the most beautiful museum of vintage, antique, classic vehicles in a microcosm any place in the country.
Well,
they're beautiful.
And one of the things that we try to, you know, we're always trying to pick the right cars to bring.
Yeah.
You know, that's always difficult because, you know, we're in the sales business, although we don't sell down there. But we present them to them and people see them, they go to our website. But it's always a balance of, do I take something that's saleable or I take something that's really cool? And the really cool,
you do
the
a really good
cool
mix.
always wins.
Yeah.
It's always just like,
and
you know
where
what?
do you go into a museum and you see a Plymouth Superbird.
Yeah.
And Mr. Jones has a 1968 Jag.
And a 37 Cord and a Duesenberg and a Packard and you can name it.
Yeah, and so it's heck, I almost said hell. Hell, that's the price of
we
admission.
We can say hell. We can say
that's
damn.
That's the price of admission right there. And then, of course, they go down to, you know, the Lamborghinis and the Aston Martins. And
that's amazing, the setup that they have on those. It's really spectacular. Well, listen, it couldn't have been more of a pleasure to have you on the show. And
I hope you invite me back.
We absolutely will. We can do this
myself.
Every year. We can do this before the
Maybe
auto
we'll
show.
Bring Santa in.
Yeah, we should bring Santa in. Absolutely.